Brian from the Kid Cudi Humming Brian here, and I got a review of the new A24 horror movie, X, here for you. The film follows a group of adult filmmakers in the 1970s traveling out of Houston in their van to do a proto-Airbnb at an old guy's house, where they're gonna shoot a film, and then a horror movie happens to them. Obviously, this film is a throwback to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes, other grindhouse slasher movies of the late 70s, early 80s too, but mostly just that one. Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the only horror movies out there that I think is genuinely scary while also thrilling and impeccably made, so it is a major fool's errand to try and imitate it so much. X's expressed love for that film works a homage of some kind around pretty much every corner if you look for them, like big blaring neon lights pointing out the similarities for you. But while derivative in concept, as it progresses and the film develops its own voice, X attempts to go in different directions than Texas Chainsaw Massacre rather than rip it off. Nothing's ever gonna look as naturally grimy as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but as far as homage, X is great at replicating it. A character goes swimming and she looks dirtier and sweatier leaving the lake than she did jumping in. This is the newest film by director Ty West, who clearly has come a long way from Cabin Fever 2, which is a fitting film to find in his history because the first Cabin Fever was Eli Roth dispensing a grab bag of references to horror movies which inspired him, making those things his own. His immature, brain-dead own. X is wildly more competent, effective, and well-written than Cabin Fever. It's not even a comparison, but West is doing effectively the same thing here. X is not new or unpredictable or subtle, but based on what I thought it was going to be, grew into exactly what I wanted tonally out of a film like this. And I want to discuss those expectations and why. With movies like Midsommar, Hereditary, and The Lighthouse, A24 popularized the elevated horror moniker that Get Out began, which has since led to a glut of horror films pretentiously chasing a formless idea of higher meaning, clearly not out of a need to comment on something, but because it's popular to do it. A lot of movies like Antlers, Saint Maud, and Lamb have come out in recent years, just overwrought with metaphor and self-seriousness, but none of that coming from a genuine place. They're just co-opting the aesthetic. And this is a trend I'm just completely over if all you're gonna do is cash in on it, like those films. I say this because X is a film not wanting for subtext, but found a way to include it while also being complete intentional schlock. Centering around a squad of porn filmmakers, X likens porn to horror movies, but instead of holding up two forms of exploitation and leaving it at "these are both the same," plays with the structure and editing of the film to demonstrate the comparison it's trying to make. If you substitute the genre elements, the adult movie the characters are making within the film has the same plot as the film itself. Even though it's trying to make a statement, I question if X can be classified as elevated horror, because I question if X even is horror. It employs horror elements, certainly, but based on impact and execution, the film is actually quite funny, and the comparison being made at the film's core makes it so much easier to see it that way. Especially as the film nears its conclusion, way too many moments have such impeccable comedic timing for me to not give West the benefit of the doubt this was intentional. It's not just me being a nerd. There are more horrifying scenes in the half where they're shooting the porno than the half that looks like a scary movie. The film not taking itself quite as seriously helps the message come across stronger, the opposite of what one might expect, but it doesn't resort to schlock as an excuse to not deliver on what a horror fan is looking for. I gotta give it up for the practical effects West uses on the kills here, and the rest of the aforementioned Texas Chainsaw Grindhouse atmosphere has such passion behind it. There's some really satisfying and entertaining setup and payoff as well. Think of Malignant or that new Matrix movie, which both use a genre for misdirection purposes, but the actual elements of those genres they're using fall flat on their face and the movies are excruciating to sit through as a result. There are movies, just as cliched as X, that play the cliches straight, as in, there is nothing else they got going on, it's not part of a joke, and execute those cliches worse than it. Though the acting is pretty middling, these characters bring almost nothing to the table that makes them interesting or above the baseline I'm here to watch him die slasher movie material. Mia Goth and Jenna Ortega are the standouts, but the performances are fine. They're fine, nothing offensive. And speaking of the characters, I know the film's being satirical, but sometimes it goes a little too far even for me. Like the first time they meet the old man, he starts waving a shotgun around at him, and there's no reason why they don't just bail. For all of the incredibly entertaining horror bits like the mood, the kills, the effects, and especially the implementation of licensed music, I wouldn't expect X to hit every marker you're looking for perfectly. If there was a problem to be had with X and its satire, the biggest problem is that you know going in this is a horror film, and they obviously had to market it this way, so unlike the films that inspired it, there are always clues as to the film X is going to become in the second half. But as it teases a sudden change in story and then cites Psycho as an inspiration, that's a film where you genuinely would not know a plot shift is coming. Sometimes X prioritizes what it wants to do plot-wise over ensuring the satire is uncomplicated and makes sense completely. And finally, for a Sam Levinson-produced project, this is not super exploitative or male-gazy. Okay, let me take that back. I mean, they're shooting porn, so ladies and gentlemen, we have nipples. But nothing went out of its way to be gratuitous in a way that took me out of the film. But speaking of that, Kid Cudi, man to man, if that's your real penis, like, good for you, my dude. I'm happy for you. At the end of the day, X is for you if you're sick of the self-serious trappings that are getting kind of stale among elevated horror. It's schlocky and entertaining as hell, but also has Ty West's best direction so far to prop all that up and make it feel in service of a legitimate vision. I'm giving X a 7 out of 10. Anyway, did you like this movie more than me, less than me? And if you care to, please tell me. So if you like not only words, but the way I arrange and then say them, please consider giving this video a like, it helps me with the algorithm, and subscribing to me, Brian, from the channel Brian. Thank you, and goodbye.